He was born without knowing where his father was. 20 years later, what he finds on the road is shocking. Michael Johnson was driving down the state highway when he spotted the rusty pickup truck on the shoulder, and something inside him trembled. The old vehicle, with its peeling paint and flat tires, was identical to the one in the only photo he had of his father. It was in that moment, with his heart racing and his hands sweating on the steering wheel, that he decided to stop. 20 years of unanswered questions seemed to scream in that unexpected encounter. His mother had always told him his father left before he was born, leaving no trace, no explanations. Just a name, Robert Johnson, and that faded photo of a young man smiling next to a blue pickup. Michael pulled over and slowly walked toward the abandoned vehicle. The metal was corroded, but he could still make out remnants of the blue paint he recognized from the picture. The wheels had sunk into the dirt, as if it had been there for years. Must be a coincidence, he muttered to himself, but something in his chest said otherwise. He jotted down the license plate on his phone, even though some numbers were nearly illegible from the rust. The road was deserted, cutting through the dry fields of rural Texas. He was on his way back from a job interview in Austin when he spotted the truck. In the nearest town, a small Cedar Creek with 20,000 residents, Michael stopped at a gas station to ask about the vehicle. The attendant, an older man with graying hair, shook his head as Michael described the pickup. "That old heap's been there about 5 years, son. Nobody knows who it belongs to. The town tried to remove it, but someone always claims to know the owner." "And who would that owner be?" "There's a mechanic here in town, Mr. Frank, who always says he knows the story, but he talks so much nobody takes him seriously." Michael followed the directions to a small repair shop behind a yellow house. Mr. Frank was a short man in his 60s, his hands perpetually stained with grease. "Oh, that pickup," the mechanic said, wiping his hands on an old rag. "That belonged to Robert Johnson. Good man, but a bit odd. Lived alone on a run-down little ranch out in the backcountry." Michael's heart nearly stopped. Robert Johnson. What kind of man was he? Tall fella, green eyes, always kept to himself. Would stop by now and then to buy used parts, but I haven't seen him in a while. Must have been 2 years. Michael pulled the photo from his wallet and showed it to the mechanic. Mr. Frank scratched his head and leaned in closer. "Son, you related to him? You've got the same face. Maybe, can you tell me where that ranch is?" "Well, it's kinda hard to find. Take Old Ranch Road, about 9 miles from here. When you see a busted-up barbed wire fence, turn right. But I don't know if he's still there, you hear?" Michael thanked him and returned to his car. His hands shook as he started the engine. 2 decades of emptiness might finally be coming to an end. Old Ranch Road was unpaved, full of potholes that made the car sway. The sun was beginning to set when Michael spotted the collapsed fence the mechanic had mentioned. He turned right, following an even rougher trail. The property he found was desolate. A small wooden house with peeling paint and missing roof tiles. Around it were remnants of what had once been a garden, with a few stubborn vegetables still growing. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, back to the story. Michael parked and sat for a few minutes, gathering his courage. Through the foggy window of the house, he saw movement. Someone was inside. He took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. Every step toward the house felt heavy, weighed down by 20 years of hope and fear. He knocked carefully on the wooden door. "Is anyone there?" The noise stopped. After a few seconds, he heard shuffling footsteps approaching. The door opened just a crack, and a green eye studied him with suspicion. "What do you want?" The voice was hoarse, tired, but Michael Johnson recognized something familiar in it. He pulled the photo from his pocket again. "My name is Michael Johnson. I'm looking for Robert James Johnson." The door opened a little wider, revealing a tall, thin man with graying hair and an unshaven beard. The green eyes were unmistakably the same as his own. "Who's asking?" I think I'm your son." The man turned pale. For a moment it seemed like he might faint. He steadied himself against the doorframe and stared at Michael. "That's not possible," he whispered. "Karen Johnson is my mother. She told me my father's name was Robert James and that he disappeared before I was born." Robert James closed his eyes and rested his forehead against the door. When he opened them again, tears streamed down his face. You shouldn't be here. Why not? Why did you leave? Why did you abandon me? Because, Robert James's voice faltered, because I wasn't fit to be a father. I'm still not. Michael felt the anger he'd held for years rising in his throat, but he also saw the pain in the man's eyes. This wasn't the reunion he'd imagined. Can I come in? Can we talk? Robert James hesitated, but finally opened the door. The inside of the house was simple, almost empty. A few old pieces of furniture, a basic kitchen, and to Michael's surprise, several photos of him at different ages on the walls. You kept up with me all these years? Robert James looked away, ashamed. Your mother sent photos. I never asked, but she sent them. Said she thought I had a right to know how you were growing up. So she knew where you were? She did, but she promised she'd never tell unless you asked directly. Michael sat in a wooden chair, trying to process the information. His mother had known where his father was all these years and never said a word. Why did you decide that? Why let me grow up thinking my father abandoned me? Robert James sank into an old armchair across the room. His hands trembled slightly. Because I asked her to. Because I did abandon you. But you were here the whole time. That's not total abandonment. Michael. Robert James took a deep breath. I have an illness. My father had the same thing. It gets worse over time, and in the end, well, it's not pretty to see. Michael studied his father more closely. Now he noticed how he held his hands, the slight unsteadiness in his movements. What kind of illness? Doctors have fancy names for it, but what matters is it destroys your muscles slowly. First the hands, then the arms, the legs. My father spent his last years in a wheelchair, depending on everyone for everything. Silence filled the room. Michael tried to understand why that would be a reason to leave his family. But that doesn't mean you had to go. Yes, it does, Robert James said, struggling to stand. You don't understand. I watched my mother care for my father. She lost her youth, her social life, everything. Became a full-time caregiver. Couldn't leave the house, couldn't have a life. Michael began to see his father's reasoning, but the anger remained. But that wasn't just your decision. My mother had a right to choose. Your mother was young, beautiful, had her whole life ahead of her. I wasn't going to let her waste it because of me. And me? Didn't I have the right to know my father? Robert James sat back down, the weight of the question clear on his face. I thought it'd be better for you to grow up without knowing me than to know me and lose me bit by bit. I thought it'd be easier. For who? You or me? The question hung in the air unanswered. Robert Johnson looked at the photos on the wall, decades of life he had observed from a distance. Every night I wondered if I'd made the right choice. But it was already done. How could I explain to you that your father chose to live alone on an abandoned ranch instead of being by your side? Michael stood up and walked over to one of the photos. It was from his high school graduation. He remembered that day, how he'd missed his father when he saw other students with their whole families. How did you get this photo? Your mother. She always said if you knew I wanted the photos, maybe you'd understand I still cared. But I never knew, because it had to be that way. I didn't deserve for you to know. Michael turned to face his father. For the first time, he saw beyond the anger and hurt. He saw a broken man who had spent 20 years punishing himself for a decision he thought was right at the time. Did you ever think maybe you robbed me of the chance to decide for myself? That maybe I wanted to be by your side, sickness or not? Robert lowered his head. I did. Many times, but it was too late to turn back. It's never too late. For me, it is. Look what I've become. A sick old man living alone in a house that's falling apart. What kind of father would that be for you? Michael looked around the house. It was simple but clean. The photos on the wall showed care, affection. This man may have been physically distant, but he never stopped being a father in his heart. The kind of father who kept every photo of me for 20 years. The kind of father who still cares so much, he'd rather suffer alone than see me suffer. Tears welled up in Robert's eyes again. It wasn't just for you. It was for me, too. I was afraid you'd see me getting worse, afraid I'd become a burden, afraid I wasn't strong enough. How's the illness now? Stable. Some days are better than others, but I can still manage on my own. The doctors said sometimes it progresses slower than expected. Michael sat back down, this time closer to his father. Did you ever think maybe you made that decision too soon? That maybe you wasted years we could have had together? Every day. Then why didn't you ever try to come back? Pride, fear, and most of all because your mother moved on. She remarried when you were 10, had a daughter. I couldn't just show up and destroy the family you'd built. Michael needed a moment to process that. His mother had indeed remarried Stephen, and his half-sister Emily was one of the most important people in his life. But that didn't mean there wasn't room for Robert too. My family wouldn't be destroyed. It would just grow. You sure about that? I am. Emily's always wanted to meet you. Is always. She's been asking about my biological father since she was little. Your mother told her about me. Of course, not in great detail, but yes, Stephen's always been respectful when it came up. They knew you were an important part of my story. Robert stayed quiet for a long time, taking it all in. And you? What was it like growing up without me? Michael felt a lump in his throat. It was a question he'd asked himself for years. Hard, especially as a teenager. I was angry, wondered if there was something wrong with me that made you leave. Stephen's a good man, but he's not my father. There are things only a father can teach, moments only a father can share. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know, I can see it in your eyes. The sky outside was growing dark. Michael realized he'd spent hours in that house, longer than he'd planned when he stopped to see the truck on the road. Can I ask you something? Sure. The truck on the road, was it yours? Robert nodded. It was. Stopped working about 5 years ago. I would always go there when the longing became too much. I'd sit on the bench looking toward the city where you all lived. Why didn't you bring her here? Because it was halfway between us. It was the closest I could get to you. Michael felt his chest tighten. He pictured his father, alone, sitting in the abandoned pickup truck, fighting the urge to drive into town to see him. How many times did you go there? Many. Especially on your birthdays, at Christmas, when I'd see in the photos that you were happy and wonder if I'd made the right choice. And what did you decide? That you were all fine without me. That I'd made the right decision, even if it hurt. Michael stood and walked to the window. In the reflection of the glass, he saw his father and himself side by side for the first time. The resemblance was undeniable. "Dad," he said, testing the word aloud. "Can I call you Dad?" Robert choked back his tears. "You can, if you want to." "I do, and I want you to meet your family, your real family." "Michael, I don't know if that's a good idea. Maybe it's better to leave things as they are. Why do you keep making decisions for me? I'm 20 years old. I can choose to have my father in my life. What if the illness gets worse? What if I become a burden to you all? Then we'll handle it together, like a family does." Robert looked at the photos on the wall again, as if searching for an answer in them. "Your mother will be mad at me for you finding me." "No, she won't. She always said if I ever wanted to look for you, she'd support me. I think deep down she hoped this would happen." "Really? Really? She always spoke of you fondly, never with anger. Said you were a good man who made a hard choice. She was always too kind to me." Michael sat back down beside his father. "Dad, I want to try. I want you to meet Stephen, Emily. I want you to be part of our lives. I'm not asking you to move into our house tomorrow, but we can start slow. What if I don't know how to be a father? I missed 20 years of practice. Then we'll learn together. I don't know how to have a father suddenly either." Robert laughed for the first time since Michael had arrived. It was a quiet sound, but genuine. "Were you always this stubborn? Must be genetic." They sat in silence for a few minutes, each lost in thought. Finally, Robert spoke. "Do you want to have dinner here tonight? I don't have much, but I can make something. I'd love that. Robert stood carefully and went to the kitchen. Michael followed, wanting to help, but also wanting to watch his father's movements, trying to understand his condition better. Can I help with anything? You can cut some potatoes while I prepare the beans. They worked side by side in silence. It was strange, yet natural, like something they should have done 1,000 times before. Michael, can I ask you something? Sure. How's your life? Work, school, girlfriend? Michael smiled. It was comforting that his father cared about these details. I just graduated with a business degree. Today I was coming back from a job interview in Austin. As for a girlfriend, there's a girl, Jessica, but we're still getting to know each other. What's she like? Smart, funny, studies psychology. I think you'd like her. I'd like to meet her. Maybe one day you will. As they cooked, Robert shared a little about his life on the ranch. How he'd learned to grow some vegetables, how he tended to the few chickens in his yard, how he spent his days reading books borrowed from the town library. Sounds like a lonely life. It is, but I got used to it, or thought I had. And today, after our talk? Today I realize maybe I wasted a lot of time punishing myself for something that maybe didn't have to be a punishment. They dined at the small kitchen table. The food was simple but made with love. Michael noticed his father had trouble holding the utensils firmly, but didn't comment on it. Dad, can I tell you something? Of course. I've always dreamed of this moment. Ever since I was little, I imagined what it would be like to find you, what we'd talk about, how our relationship would be. And how does reality compare to your dreams? Different. More complicated, but also more real. In my dreams, you always had some heroic reason for leaving. In reality, you had a human reason. And in a way, that's better. Why? Because heroes are perfect, and I don't need a perfect father. I need a real one, with flaws, fears, someone who makes mistakes and learns. Robert stopped eating and looked intently at his son. When did you get so wise? I guess growing up without a father forces you to mature faster, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. After dinner, they sat on the porch. The sky was full of stars, and the quiet of the countryside was broken only by crickets and the wind in the trees. Michael, I need to tell you a few more things. I'm listening. When I found out your mother was pregnant, I panicked. Not because I was afraid of being a father, but because I was afraid I wouldn't be a good one as my illness progressed. And when did the symptoms start? I'd already noticed small signs when you were born. Little tremors, weakness in my hands. The doctor confirmed the diagnosis when you were 6 months old, and that's when you decided to leave. Not right away. I fought the idea for months. Your mother didn't know about the diagnosis. I couldn't bring myself to tell her. Why not? Because she was already overwhelmed with a new baby. How could I add that burden to her shoulders? Michael thought about it. He understood his father's reasoning, but disagreed. Don't you think she had the right to know? To choose to stand by you anyway? Now, 20 years later, I know she did. Back then, it felt like the right thing to do. And how did you leave? Mom always said you disappeared one night. Robert took a deep breath before answering. I left a letter. Said I wasn't ready to be a father, that I needed time to find myself. Lies to protect the truth. And the ranch? How did you end up here? It belonged to my mother's family, had been abandoned for years. I came here because it was far enough that I wouldn't accidentally run into you, but close enough that I could still hear how you were doing. And you always kept up with news about us? Not directly, but in a small town, word travels. I knew when your mother remarried, when you started school, things like that. Didn't that make it all harder? Very. There were times I thought about coming back, especially when you were little. But then I'd see how happy your mother seemed with Stephen, how well you were doing, and I'd convince myself I'd made the right choice. Michael stood and walked to the porch railing, staring into the darkness of the fields. Dad, can I ask you a hard question? Go ahead. Do you regret it? Robert took his time answering. Every day, but not the decision itself. I regret not finding a better way to handle it. I regret not talking to your mother, not giving her the chance to choose. And me? Do you regret not knowing me? That's an easy one. I regret it deeply. You've become an incredible man, and I missed every moment of that journey. Michael sat back down beside his father. Then let's make up for lost time. How? Start slow. You can tell me about your childhood, your family, the things you love doing. I can tell you about my life, my dreams, my fears. And then you can meet the rest of the family, if you want. Robert Johnson stayed quiet for a long time, staring at the stars. Are you sure you want this, that you won't regret it? Dad, I spent 20 years wondering about you. Now that I've found you, I won't waste any more time being afraid. Life's too short for that. What if the illness gets worse? Then we'll face it together. One thing I've learned these years is that family isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, even when things get hard. Robert turned to look at his son. When did you become wiser than your old man? Maybe because I had to grow up imagining what my father would teach me. I ended up learning some things on my own that maybe you should have taught me. Like what? Like how to forgive, how not to let pride get in the way of love, how to accept help when you need it. Robert smiled sadly. You're right. I still need to learn those things. Then let's learn them together. They stayed on the porch until almost midnight, talking about everything and nothing. Robert shared stories from his childhood, how he met Michael's mother, the dreams he had before the illness changed everything. Michael talked about school, his friends, the moments he missed his father the most. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. When they finally decided to turn in, Robert offered his room to Michael, but he chose to sleep on the living room couch. He wanted to be close, but also give them both time to process everything that had happened that day. Michael spent much of the night awake, staring at the photos on the wall. It was surreal to think that all those years while he grew up not knowing where his father was, Robert had been here, collecting moments of his life through photographs. The next morning, he woke to the smell of coffee and fried eggs. Robert was in the kitchen, moving slowly but preparing a simple breakfast. Good morning, Michael said, stretching. Good morning, son. The word felt natural on Robert's lips, as if he'd waited 20 years to say it again. They drank their coffee in comfortable silence, each lost in thought. Finally, Michael broke the quiet. Dad, I need to go back home today. My mum's waiting, and I have some things to take care of there. I understand. But I want to come back. Can we plan for me to visit next weekend? Are you sure? Absolutely. Then I'd love that. Michael finished his coffee and went to grab his things from the car. When he returned, he found Robert on the porch, gazing at the horizon. Dad, can I ask you something? Of course. I'd like to take a photo of you to show Mom and Emily. Would you let me? Robert hesitated. Are you sure they'll want to see me? I am, and even if they're hesitant at first, I'd convince them. You're my father, and that means you're part of the family. Robert went inside and came back with a recent photo taken by a neighbor a few months earlier. I don't look my best here, but it's the most recent one I have. Michael studied the picture. His father was thinner and older than in the old photo, but you could still see the young man who smiled beside the blue pickup truck. You look fine in this photo. You look real. Michael. Robert stopped mid-sentence. What is it? Thank you. For looking for me. For not judging me. For giving me a second chance. No need to thank me. You're my dad. And I love you. Mistakes and all. Robert hugged his son for the first time in 20 years. It was a tight, lingering embrace full of regret and hope. I love you too, son. Always have. Michael got into the car with his heart full of conflicting emotions. He was happy to have found his father, but also sad for all the lost years. He was hopeful about the future, yet worried about the challenges ahead. As he drove back home, he passed the abandoned pickup truck on the road again. This time he stopped and got out of the car. He touched the rusted metal, trying to imagine how many times his father had been there, fighting the urge to return home. You don't have to come here alone anymore, he said aloud, as if Robert Johnson could hear him. "Now we'll be together." The drive home took 3 hours, enough time for Michael Johnson to gather his thoughts and decide how he would tell his family everything. When he finally parked in front of the house where he'd grown up, he saw his mother peeking through the living room window. Karen Johnson was 52, with brown hair streaked with grey, and a smile that always managed to calm Michael. The moment he stepped inside, she immediately sensed something had changed. "How was the interview?" she asked, though it was clear her attention was elsewhere. "The interview went well, Mum, but something more important happened." Karen sat on the living room couch, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern. "What happened?" Michael pulled the photo of Robert Johnson from his pocket and placed it on the coffee table. Karen looked at the image, and her face completely changed. The color drained from her cheeks. "Where did you get this?" "I found him, Mom. I found my dad." Karen was silent for a long time, staring at the photo. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "How? Where?" Michael told her the whole story, from the moment he saw the truck on the road to the morning he'd just spent with Robert Johnson. Karen listened without interrupting, tears silently streaming down her face. "Is he okay?" was her first question when Michael finished. "Physically, yes. The illness has progressed, but he's still stable. Emotionally, he's really hurting, Mum. He spent 20 years punishing himself for a decision he thought was best for all of us." "Did you talk about everything?" "Almost everything. He told me why he left, how he's lived all these years. He said you sent him pictures of me." Karen lowered her head like a child caught doing something wrong. "Are you mad at me for that?" "No, Mom. I understand why you did it, but I wish you'd told me. I promised him I wouldn't unless you asked directly, and you never asked if I knew where he was." Michael thought about that. It was true. He'd always asked about his father, but never whether his mother knew his whereabouts. "What about you? How do you feel knowing he's alive and that I found him?" Karen stood and walked to the living room window, looking out at the street where Michael had grown up. Relieved, worried, happy, sad, all at once. "Relieved why?" "Because now you can have the answers you've always wanted. Because he's okay. Because maybe now he'll stop punishing himself." "And worried?" "About you. About him. About our family. I don't know how Stephen and Emily will react. I don't know if we're ready for this." Michael stepped closer and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Mum, Stephen's always been understanding when it came to my biological father, and Emily's been curious about him since she was little. I think they'll support us. What if they don't? Then we'll talk until we find a way to make it work. But I'm not giving up on my father again." Karen turned to face her son. "Are you sure this is what you want? Because if it is, you have my full support. It's always been my biggest regret, not fighting harder to convince him to stay when you were a baby. Why didn't you fight?" "Because I was exhausted, scared, and he seemed so determined. When he said he wasn't ready to be a father, I believed him. Only later did I realize he was hiding something." "Did you suspect he was ill?" "I suspected something was wrong. He had changed in the last few months, grown more distant, more melancholic. But I thought it was just the nerves of becoming a father for the first time." "And when did you find out the truth?" "A few years later. One day I ran into his cousin in town, and she casually mentioned that Robert Johnson was sick, that he had the same thing his father had. That's when everything made sense." "And why did you never tell me this?" "Because I had promised him I wouldn't talk about the illness, and also because I didn't want you to pity him. I wanted you to look for him out of love, not sympathy if you ever decided to. If..." Michael hugged his mother. For the first time in years, he felt he fully understood the choices she had made. "Thank you, Mom, for respecting his decision, for sending the photos, for always speaking of him with kindness. He's a good man, Michael. He made a bad choice, but for reasons he thought were good. I hope you two can make up for lost time." Just then, Stephen came home from work. He was a tall man with dark hair and a constant smile. He worked as an engineer at a local company and had always been a loving stepfather to Michael. "How was the interview?" he asked, dropping his briefcase on the hall table. Michael and Karen exchanged glances. It was time to tell Stephen everything too. "Stephen, I need to tell you something important," Michael said. Stephen noticed the seriousness in his tone and sat down in the armchair. "What's going on?" Once again, Michael told the whole story. Stephen listened quietly, asking a few clarifying questions but showing no signs of jealousy or discomfort. "And how are you feeling?" Stephen asked when Michael finished. "Confused, happy, worried. A lot of things at once. And do you want to have a relationship with him?" "I do, very much." Stephen nodded. "Then you have my support. Robert Johnson has always been your biological father, and that never changed just because I became your stepdad. There's room in your life for both of us." Michael felt an enormous relief. He'd always known Stephen was understanding, but he'd still feared he might feel threatened. "Are you sure about this?" "Absolutely. You've always missed him, and that's not something I can completely fill. Only he can do that. What if he wants to be part of family moments? Birthdays, Christmas? Then we'll include him. Our family has always been good at adapting." At that moment, Emily came home from school. She was 10 years old with curly blonde hair and endless curiosity about everything. When she saw everyone sitting in the living room with serious expressions, she immediately sensed something important was happening. "What's going on?" she asked, dropping her backpack on the floor. "Emily, come here," Michael called. "I need to tell you something about my father." Emily sat beside Michael, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Did you find him?" "I did. Where was he? Why did he leave? Is he nice? When do I get to meet him?" The questions poured out in a rush, typical of Emily's fast-paced personality. Michael laughed, realizing how his sister always managed to bring lightness to serious situations. "Easy, Em. I'll answer everything but one question at a time." Michael told Emily a simplified version of the story, leaving out some of the heavier details, but keeping the essentials. She listened carefully, asking occasional questions. "So he was sick and thought it was better to leave," she summed up at the end. "Basically, yes. That's so sad. He must have felt so alone all these years." Emily's simplicity and empathy touched Michael deeply. Once again, he realized he'd worried for nothing about the family's reaction. "So when do we get to meet him?" continued Emily. "We don't know yet. I need to talk to him more first, see if he's ready to meet you all." "Of course he is. He must be eager to meet his son's family." Karen, Stephen, and Michael laughed at Emily's absolute confidence. "It's not that simple, Em," Karen explained. "Your brother and Robert James need to build their own relationship first before including others." "But I want to meet him too. I've always wanted a real grandpa." Stephen made an exaggeratedly offended face. "Hey, don't I count as a grandpa?" "You're my stepdad, silly," said Emily, giving him a peck on the cheek. "But Robert James is Rafa's real father, so it's like he's my grandpa too." Emily's childlike logic made everyone laugh, but it also revealed something important. To her, Robert James was already automatically part of the family. There were no complications, jealousy, or resentment, just pure acceptance. During dinner, the conversation kept circling back to Robert James. Stephen asked practical questions about his health, Karen wanted details about how he was living, and Emily made elaborate plans for when she finally met him. "Rafa, can you ask if he likes checkers? Or chess? I can teach him video games too," Emily chattered. "Emily, let Michael build his relationship with his father first," Karen gently warned. "But he's family now. Families do things together." Again, Emily's simplicity cut through all the complications the adults were creating in their heads. That night, Michael stayed awake for a long time, planning his next meeting with Robert James. He decided he'd bring some family photos to show his father, so he could start getting to know the people who would now be part of his life. The next day, Michael called Robert James. The ranch phone rang several times before he answered. "Hello? Hi, Dad. It's Michael." "Michael?" The joy in Robert James's voice was clear. "How are you?" "Good. I talked to my family yesterday about our meeting." "And how did they react?" "Better than I expected. They all want to meet you." There was silence on the other end. Really? Really? My mum cried, but from relief. Stephen said he always knew this day would come. And Emily, well, Emily's already planning which games to teach you. Robert James chuckled softly. They sound like special people. They are. And they're eager to meet you. But, like we talked about, we'll take it slow. How about I come back this Saturday? I can bring some photos so you can get to know your family better. I'd love that. And Dad, can you think of something you'd like to do with me? Something you always wanted to do with a son? Robert James was quiet for a moment. There is one thing. I always wanted to teach someone to fish. There's a pond nearby that's good for it. Perfect. Saturday I'll bring fishing gear and you can teach me. Deal. When he hung up, Michael felt lighter than he had in years. For the first time, he had a real father and a whole family ready to welcome him. The rest of the week flew by. Michael bought basic fishing gear, picked out family photos to bring to Robert James, and even started thinking about how he could help his father with practical things, like better medical care and small repairs around the house. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. On Saturday morning, Michael left early for the ranch. This time the trip felt shorter, less weighed down by anxiety and more full of anticipation. When he arrived, he found Robert James on the porch, wearing a clean shirt and his hair neatly combed. It was obvious he'd dressed up specially for the visit. "Good morning, Dad." "Good morning, son. Ready to learn how to fish?" "More than ready." They walked together to the pond, which was about 15 minutes from the house. It was a beautiful spot, surrounded by trees, with calm waters that reflected the blue sky. "This place is beautiful," Michael remarked. "It's my favorite spot on the property. I come here when I need to think." Robert began teaching Michael how to prepare the rod, attach the bait and where to cast the line. His hands trembled slightly from his illness, but they were still precise and skilled. "Fishing is more about patience than technique," Robert explained. "You have to be willing to wait, to stay still, to observe." "Seems like you learned more than just fishing here." "I did. I learned that sometimes the best things in life come when you stop forcing them and just let them happen." They fished in comfortable silence for a while. Finally, Michael broke the quiet. "Dad, can I show you the photos I brought?" "Of course." Michael pulled a small stack of pictures from his backpack. He started with recent ones of Karen. "She's even more beautiful now than when I met her," Robert said with a nostalgic smile. "She always speaks fondly of you, never with anger or resentment. Your mother has always been a special person. Stephen is a lucky man." Michael showed photos of Stephen, explaining how he had come into their lives and been a present, caring stepfather. "He seems like a good man." "He is. He never tried to replace you, but he was always there when I needed a father figure." Robert nodded without a trace of jealousy or resentment. "I'm glad you had that. It's what I wanted most when I left, for you to find someone better than me." "Dad, Stephen is a wonderful man, but he's not better than you. He's different, and there's room in my life for both of you." The last photos were of Emily. Michael showed pictures of her from infancy up to her current age of 10. "She's beautiful," Robert said, his eyes misty, "and she seems like a special kid." "She really is. Smart, curious, loving, and she's really excited to meet you." "Really? She doesn't feel jealous about sharing her parents' attention with me?" "The opposite. She sees you as an addition to the family, not a subtraction. For her, the more people to love, the better." Robert stared at a photo of the whole family together at a recent Christmas. "You all look really happy." "We are. And now you can be part of that happiness too." Just then, Michael felt a slight tug on the line. Robert helped him reel in his first fish, a small silver sunfish. "Congratulations, your first fish." "Actually, our first fish. Together." They fished until mid-afternoon, talking about everything and nothing. Robert shared stories from his childhood, about his own father, and how he'd learned to fish with his grandpa Robert. Michael talked about school, friends, and future plans. You mentioned a girlfriend last time. How's that going? Jessica. We're still getting to know each other, but she's special. Smart, funny, gets me. Do you think she'd understand our situation? I think so. She's studying psychology, so she knows families are complicated. Plus, she lost her dad as a kid, so she understands what it's like growing up with that void. I'd like to meet her someday. And she'd like to meet you. I've already told her about you. What did you say? That I found my father, that you're a good man who made a hard choice, and that we're learning how to be father and son together. Robert smiled. She really does get it. By late afternoon, they headed back to the house with a few fish. Robert insisted on preparing them for dinner. Dad, can I ask you something? Sure. Have you ever thought about getting better treatment? For your illness, I mean. There are new therapies, physical rehab, things that could help. Robert Johnson stopped cleaning the fish and looked at Michael. To be honest, no. I didn't think it was worth spending money on that if I was just going to die alone anyway. But now you won't die alone. Now you have a family who cares about you. Michael, those treatments are expensive. I can't afford them. What if I help? I can look into options, see what Medicare covers, find ways to improve your quality of life. Robert stayed quiet for a long time. Why would you do that? Because you're my father. Because I love you, because I want you to have the best life possible for as long as possible. But you don't even really know me yet. Dad, love isn't about time. It's about choice. And I choose you, illness and all. Robert turned away to hide his tears, but Michael saw him wipe his eyes with the back of his hand. All right then. We can look into those options. Great. I'll start on Monday. They ate the fish they had caught, and Michael thought he'd never tasted anything so delicious. It wasn't just the food, it was the meaning behind it. Dad, I want to suggest something. What? How about you come over next weekend to see our house? Nothing forced, just a Sunday lunch so you can meet everyone in person. Robert looked visibly nervous. You think that's a good idea? What if they don't like me in person? They'll like you. How could they not? But if you're not ready yet, we can wait a little longer. No. I want to meet them. I'm just nervous. It's normal to be nervous. They're nervous too, but everyone wants this to work. What about Emily? A 10-year-old might not understand our situation. Dad, Emily's the last one who'll judge you. To her, you're already automatically part of the family. The only problem might be her talking too much and not giving you a moment's peace. Robert laughed. I think I can handle that. So it's settled? Next Sunday? Settled. That night, Michael slept in Robert's room while his father insisted on staying on the living room couch. In the morning, they woke up and had breakfast together again. Michael, can I ask you something? Of course. Can you help me buy new clothes for Sunday lunch? It's been years since I bought anything and I want to make a good impression. Sure, Dad. We can go into town now if you want. They spent the morning at a small clothing store in Cedar Creek. Michael helped his father pick out dress pants, a light blue shirt and simple but elegant shoes. Robert looked at himself in the store mirror and smiled. It's been years since I've seen myself like this. You look great, classy but not overdone. You think your family will approve? Dad, they already approved you before they even met you. The clothes are just a bonus. When it was time for Michael to head home, Robert walked him to the car. Michael, thank you. For everything. For finding me, for giving me a second chance, for including your family in this. You don't have to thank me. We're family now. Still, thank you. These have been the best days I've had in 20 years. They're just the beginning, Dad. There's so much more to come. Michael drove home with his heart full of hope. With each meeting, his relationship with Robert grew stronger, more natural. It was like they were making up for 20 years of lost time in concentrated doses. During the week, Michael kept in daily contact with his father by phone. They talked about simple things, how the weather was, what they'd eaten, little events of the day. But those simple conversations were precious to both of them. Michael also kept his promise to research treatments for his father's condition. He found several options available through Medicare, including physical therapy and medications that could slow the progression of symptoms. Dad, I found some interesting options, he said during one of their calls. What kind of options? There's a rehabilitation center in Austin that has a specific program for your condition. It's free, and they offer physical therapy, occupational therapy, and regular medical checkups. Is it very far from here? An hour by car. You could go twice a week, and I can take you whenever you need. You do that? Of course, Dad. Or even better, how about you consider moving closer to us? You don't have to live in our house, but maybe in a nearby town where it would be easier for you to access treatment and be close to family. Robert Johnson stayed quiet for so long that Michael thought the call had dropped. Dad, you there? I am. Just thinking. For 20 years I dreamed of being near you all, and now that it's possible, I'm scared. Scared of what? That in day-to-day life, you'll realize I'm not the father you imagined. That I'll be a burden, that I'll ruin the family's harmony. Dad, you won't ruin anything. You'll add to it. And about being a burden, that doesn't even make sense. Everyone in the family has their own limitations, their own needs. We help each other. But my condition will get worse over time. And when that happens, we'll face it together. That's what family is for. On Saturday, Michael went back to the ranch, this time to pick up Robert for Sunday lunch. He wanted him to stay over on Saturday so he could wake up in the family home and feel less nervous. When he arrived, he found Robert ready and waiting with a small bag in hand. All set, Dad. More ready than I've ever been in my life. The drive home was smooth. Robert looked out the window with curiosity, taking in every detail of the town where his son had grown up. This is where you were raised? Yeah, that's the elementary school I went to. Over there's the park where I played as a kid. And that's the bakery where I always bought bread for my mum. Robert absorbed every detail as if memorizing a treasure map. When they got home, the whole family was waiting on the porch. Karen, Stephen, and Emily were visibly nervous but smiling. Michael parked the car and looked at his father. Ready? Ready. They got out of the car together. For a moment, everyone stood still, as if no one quite knew what to do next. Then Emily, unable to contain her curiosity and excitement, ran toward Robert. You're Robert, I'm Emily. She hugged him with the spontaneity only a child could have. Robert was visibly moved and hugged her back. Hi, Emily. You're even prettier than in the pictures. Thank you, you're handsomer too. You have the same eyes as Michael. Karen approached more slowly, tears in her eyes. Robert. Karen. They embraced, and Michael saw 20 years of history, regrets, and forgiveness in that hug. Are you okay? Karen asked. I am now. Stephen stepped forward and extended his hand. Stephen, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. The pleasure's mine, and thank you for taking care of my family all these years. Our family, Stephen corrected with a smile. They all went inside together. Robert looked around each room with interest, trying to picture Michael growing up there. Want to see my room? Emily asked, already pulling Robert by the hand. Emily, let Robert settle in first, Karen said. It's okay, I'd love to see your room, Robert replied. Emily gave him a full tour of the house, chattering non-stop about every object, every photo on the wall, every memory tied to each room. Robert listened with genuine attention, asking questions and showing real interest. And this was Michael's room when he was little, Emily said, opening the door to what was now his office, but still held traces of his teenage years. Robert Johnson walked in and stood observing the walls where a few band posters and soccer team photos still hung. He always loved music, he remarked. Yes, he plays guitar. Want him to play for you later? I'd love that. Lunch was prepared together. Karen cooked the main dish, Stephen handled the salad, Michael helped with the sides, and even Robert Johnson insisted on peeling potatoes despite the tremors in his hands. Let me do that, offered Michael, seeing his father's struggle. No, I can manage. It just takes me a bit longer. Emily sat beside Robert Johnson at the kitchen table, chattering about school, friends, and asking a million questions about life on the ranch. Do you have animals there? I have a few chickens. Can I meet them? Of course, when you come visit. When can I go? Emily, let Robert breathe, said Stephen, laughing. It's okay. I like her energy, said Robert Johnson. Reminds me of someone when they were little. Who? Asked Emily. Michael. He was just as curious and talkative as a baby. At least that's what his mother told me. It was the first time Robert Johnson had shared memories of Michael as a baby. Everyone at the table fell quiet, absorbing the weight of the moment. "Do you remember me when I was a baby?" asked Michael. "I remember everything. Your first smile, the first time you held my finger with your tiny hand, how you slept on my chest." Karen's eyes filled with tears. These were memories they'd never shared, ones she'd kept to herself for 20 years. "Do you remember when he had colic all night and you walked around the house holding him?" asked Karen. "I remember. You were exhausted, so I took him, and we sat in the living room listening to soft music until he calmed down. I always felt guilty for sleeping while you cared for him," Karen confessed. "Why? You needed rest. It was natural for me to help." Michael listened, fascinated. For the first time, he was hearing stories about his earliest months from his father's perspective. "Dad, can you tell more stories like that?" "I have plenty, if you all want to hear." "We do," said Emily. "I love baby stories." Lunch was served in the dining room on the good dishes the family only used for special occasions. Robert Johnson noticed the care and was visibly moved. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble." "Of course we did," said Karen. "This is a special day. We're celebrating our family being complete for the first time." Over lunch, conversation flowed naturally. Robert Johnson talked about life on the ranch, the plans he'd made and abandoned, the books he read. The family shared about their routines, jobs, and school. "Robert, what did you do before moving to the ranch?" asked Stephen. "I worked at an auto shop. Always liked fixing things, working with my hands." "Michael loves that too," said Emily. "He's always fixing something around the house." "Genetics," said Michael, smiling. "Do you still work on cars?" asked Stephen. "I do odd jobs for neighbors here and there. Helps pay the bills." "If you want, I can introduce you to some folks in town. There's always someone needing a good mechanic. You'd do that?" "Of course. We're family now." After lunch, Michael picked up the guitar and played a few songs. Robert Johnson listened intently, visibly proud. "Where'd you learn to play?" "Stephen taught me the basics, then I taught myself." "He plays really well," said Stephen. "Has a natural talent." "Takes after his father," said Karen, looking at Robert Johnson. "Don't you remember? You used to play guitar when we were dating." "I remember. Haven't played in decades." "We have an extra guitar," offered Michael. "Want to try?" Robert Johnson hesitated. "My hands aren't as steady anymore." "It doesn't matter. Music isn't about perfection." Michael brought the second guitar, and father and son tried to play together. Robert had trouble with some chords because of his tremors, but he still remembered the songs. Michael adjusted the rhythm to match his father, and together they played an imperfect but moving version of an old tune. Emily clapped excitedly. "You're a band." "The Johnson Band," Michael suggested. "I like that," Robert said, smiling. The rest of the afternoon flew by. Emily showed her drawings to Robert, Stephen talked about his work, and Karen brought out old photo albums. Robert studied each picture carefully, as if preparing for a test. "This is my favorite," he said, pointing to a photo of Michael at 5 years old, grinning toothlessly at the camera. "Why that one?" "Because he looks genuinely happy. My biggest fear was that you'd grow up sad because of me." "I had a happy childhood, Dad. Karen and Stephen took good care of me." "I know, and I'm grateful for that." By evening, when it was time for Robert to return to the ranch, no one wanted him to leave. "Can't you stay a little longer?" Emily asked. "I need to go back, sweetheart, but I promise I'll visit again soon." "And we'll come see you at the ranch too," Karen said. "If you'd like, of course. I'd love that. The house isn't big, but there's room for all of you." Michael drove his father back to the ranch. During the trip, Robert was visibly emotional. "How was it for you?" Michael asked. "Perfect. Better than I ever imagined it could be. They liked you. And I liked them. Your family is amazing, Michael. You're lucky. We're lucky. And now you're part of it too. I still can't believe this is real, that after all these years I have a family again. You always had a family. It just took time for all of us to find each other again." When they arrived at the ranch, Robert turned to Michael before getting out of the car. "Michael, I want to accept your suggestion. What suggestion? To move closer to you all, to start treatment, to really be part of the family. Are you sure? Absolutely. I spent 20 years living in the past, punishing myself for mistakes I can't change anymore. It's time to live in the present and build a future. That's great, Dad. We'll start looking for houses to rent in our town next week. What about the ranch? We can sell or rent it. What matters is you being close to your family. That night, Michael stayed at the ranch again. He woke up early and found Robert on the porch, gazing at the stars. Can't sleep? I'm too happy to sleep, Robert admitted. I'm afraid this might all be a dream. It's not a dream, Dad. It's real, and it's just the beginning. Michael, can I ask for your forgiveness one more time? Dad, you don't need to ask anymore. I've already forgiven everything. What matters now is the future. Even so, I need to say it. I'm sorry for wasting 20 years we could have had together. I'm sorry for letting you grow up without a father. I'm sorry for being a coward. Dad, you weren't a coward. You were sick, scared, and did what you thought was best at the time. We can't change the past, but we can build an amazing future together. Thank you for giving me this chance. Thank you for being willing to take it. They sat in silence, father and son, looking at the starry sky. It was as if they were sealing a silent pact to leave the past behind and embrace the future together. On Monday, Michael started looking for houses to rent in his town. He found a few good options and called his father to discuss them. Dad, I found a small house just 3 blocks from ours. 2 people from the real estate agency said the owner is flexible with the rent. Sounds perfect. When can we see it? How about this afternoon? I can swing by to pick you up. Deal. The house was simple but cozy. 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a small backyard where Robert Johnson could have a garden. What do you think? Asked Michael. It's perfect. It has everything I need, and it's close to you all. And the rent fits your budget? It does. And with the mechanic job Stephen mentioned, I might even improve my finances. They closed the deal that same week. Robert sold some furniture from the ranch he wouldn't need in the new house and rented out the rest of the property to a neighbor who wanted to expand his land. The move was a family affair. Stephen rented a small van, Michael organized everything, Karen prepared snacks for everyone, and even Emily helped by carrying light boxes. It's like we're putting together a puzzle, Emily commented, and you're the missing piece. Robert was touched by the girl's words. Thank you, Emily. You always know what to say. It's true. Our family was almost complete, but now it's perfect. Robert's first night in the new house was special. The whole family had dinner there, breaking in the kitchen table and making his return to family life official. How does it feel living in the city again? Karen asked. Different. A good different. I haven't felt part of a community in a long time. Now you'll meet the neighbors, make friends, have a social life, Stephen said. That makes me a little nervous, Robert admitted. It's normal, Michael reassured him, but we'll be here to support you every step of the way. And I can introduce you to my school friends, Emily offered. Emily, her friends are 10 years old, Karen pointed out. So what, Robert is cool, they'll like him. Everyone laughed at Emily's simple logic. In the following weeks, Robert started treatment at the rehab center in Austin. Michael drove him twice a week, and they used the car rides to talk about everything they'd missed in the past years. How are your hands feeling? Michael asked after a few physical therapy sessions. Better. It's not that the disease has reversed, but I've learned exercises that help with coordination and strength. And how are you feeling emotionally? More hopeful than I've been in decades. Having something to live for, people to live for, it makes all the difference. The treatment was really helping. Robert had gained weight, his tremors were more controlled, and most importantly, he was visibly happier. Stephen kept his promise to introduce Robert to some contacts in town. He landed a few mechanic jobs Robert could do from home, boosting his income and giving him more independence. Stephen, I don't know how to thank you, Robert said during a family Sunday gathering. You don't have to thank me. We're family now. Still, thank you for accepting me into your lives, for not seeing me as a threat. Robert, you were never a threat. You're a blessing. Michael always missed you, and now he's whole. and we've all gained a wonderful family member." Emily, who had been listening, walked up to Robert. "Can I call you Grandpa Robert?" Robert was moved. "Of course, sweetheart. It'd be an honor." "Yay, now I have a real grandpa." Robert's integration into the family happened surprisingly naturally. He started joining all family events, birthdays, Sunday dinners, holidays. Emily invited him to school performances, Karen asked for his advice on old recipes he knew, and Stephen included him in conversations about football and politics. One day, Michael got a call at work. "Michael, it's Jessica. Can you talk?" "Of course, love. What's wrong?" "My car broke down near your place. Can you help?" "Of course, I'll head out now and..." "Wait. My dad's home today. He's a mechanic." "Want me to ask him to take a look?" "Your dad? Robert Johnson?" "That's right. If you're comfortable with it." "Absolutely. I'd love to meet him." Michael called Robert Johnson, who immediately offered to help Jessica. When Michael got home later, he found Jessica and Robert in the garage with the car hood open. "How's it going here?" Michael asked. "Your dad is amazing," Jessica said. "He figured out the problem in 5 minutes and already fixed most of it." "It was just the alternator belt," Robert explained. "No big deal." Michael watched Jessica and Robert chatting animatedly as he finished the repair. It was obvious they'd hit it off. "What were you two talking about?" "About you," Jessica said, smiling. "Your dad has a lot of interesting stories." "I hope they're good ones," Michael said, eyeing his father suspiciously. "Only the best," Robert assured. "I was telling her how determined you've always been, even as a kid." Jessica stayed for dinner, and the whole family gathered at Robert's house. It was the first time she'd met everyone together, and Michael was happy to see how naturally she fit in. "Jessica, what do you think of our crazy family?" Emily asked. "I think you're wonderful, and not crazy, special." "Robert, what do you think of Michael's girlfriend?" Emily asked with the bluntness only a child could muster. "Emily," Karen scolded. "It's fine," Robert said, smiling. "I think Michael chose very well. Jessica is smart, kind, and most importantly, she makes him happy." "And is she going to be part of the family too?" Emily pressed. "Emily, that's not something you ask," Stephen said. "Why not? I like her." Everyone laughed at Emily's honesty, including Jessica. "I like you all too," Jessica said. "And if it's up to me, I'd love to be part of this family." Michael held Jessica's hand under the table, moved by how much his life had changed in just a few months. After dinner, while the others cleaned up, Michael and Robert stepped into the backyard. "Dad, thanks for helping Jessica today." "No need to thank me. She's important to you, so she's important to me." "What do you think of her?" "I think you've found someone special. She's got a spark in her eyes, she's sharp, and most importantly, she truly loves you." "How do you know she loves me?" "By the way she talks about you, the way she looks at you. It's the same way your mother looked at me when we were young." "And how do you feel seeing all this? Your family, your new home, your life changing?" Robert was quiet for a moment, gazing at the lights inside where the family still chatted. "Grateful. More grateful than I can put into words. 6 months ago, I was alone on a ranch, punishing myself for mistakes from 20 years ago. Now I have a family, a home, a future. It feels like a miracle." "It's not a miracle, Dad. It's what happens when people who love each other choose to fight for that love. You're wise, son. I learned from you. Even without knowing you, I learned. The stubbornness, the determination, the will to fight for what's right. All of that came from you, through genes and the stories Mom told." "And what else did you learn?" "That family isn't about blood or time. It's about choice. Choosing to show up, even when it's hard. Choosing to forgive, to accept, and to build something beautiful together." Robert hugged his son. "I love you, Michael. And I promise I'll spend the rest of my life making up for the lost years." "I love you too, Dad. And you don't have to make up for anything. Just be here from now on." A few months later, Michael got the news that he'd passed the job interview in Austin. It was a great opportunity, but it would mean moving away from the family. He shared the news during a Sunday dinner at Karen and Stephen's house. "It's a great opportunity, son," said Stephen. "Really? Won't you miss me?" "Of course I will. We all will." But Austin isn't that far, just an hour's drive. And you can come visit us every weekend, suggested Emily. What do you think, Dad? Michael asked Robert. I think you should go. It's an important opportunity for your career. But what about you? Are you adjusting well here? I don't want to leave you alone again. Michael, I won't be alone. I have Karen, Stephen, Emily. I have a family now. And besides, Austin is where you take me for treatment. We can see each other on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I can go with you sometimes, offered Jessica. I've been thinking about specializing in Austin anyway. Really? Asked Michael. Really? That way we can stay together and you won't be away from family for too long. Then it's settled, said Karen. You'll take the job and we'll make it work for everyone. Michael accepted the job and moved to Austin with Jessica. They rented a small but cozy apartment and established a routine of visiting family on weekends. Tuesdays and Thursdays, when he took Robert for treatment, became special moments for father and son. They used the time in the car to talk about work, relationships, and future plans. How are things with Jessica? Robert asked during one of these drives. Really good. We're thinking of getting married next year. Really? Congratulations, son. Thank you. Actually, I wanted to ask you something. What? I'd like you to be my best man. Robert was moved. Me? Are you sure? Absolutely. You're my father, and I want you by my side on the most important day of my life. It would be an honor. And Jessica wants you all to be part of the planning too. She says a wedding is a family affair and your family. I still can't believe I have a family again. Dad, you always had a family. It just took us all a while to find each other. The wedding was scheduled for the end of the year. The preparations involved the whole family. Karen helped with decorations, Stephen handled the finances, Emily was chosen as the florist, and Robert helped organize the venue. Where do you want to hold the ceremony? Karen asked during a planning meeting. We thought about having it at the town church, said Michael. And the reception? Asked Stephen. How about having it at the ranch? Suggested Robert. I can ask the neighbor to prepare the space, and it would be a special place for all of us. The ranch where you used to live? Asked Jessica. That's right. It's where Michael found me, where our family reunited. It would be symbolic. I love that idea, said Jessica. Me too, agreed Michael. It would be perfect. The wedding preparations brought the family even closer. Robert returned to the ranch several times to organize the space, always accompanied by a family member. Emily loved these visits, running through the fields and playing with the chickens that still lived there. Grandpa Robert, when I grow up, can I live on a ranch too? She asked during one of these visits. Of course, sweetheart, but why do you want to live on a ranch? Because it's beautiful here, and because it's where our family found each other. You're right, this place will always be special to our family. A week before the wedding, Michael received an unexpected call. Michael, it's Mr. Frank, the mechanic from Cedar Creek. Hi, Mr. Frank. How are you? Good, son. The thing is, something interesting came up here. Remember your dad's truck, the one on the road? I do. Why? A guy showed up interested in buying it, said he collects old cars and wants to restore it. Thought you might want to know. Michael grew thoughtful. The pickup truck had been abandoned for years with no practical value left. But symbolically, Mr. Frank, could you tell this young man it's not for sale? I want to buy it. You want to buy it? But son, that old heap is completely ruined. It doesn't matter, I have an idea. Michael talked to his family about his plan to buy and restore the truck as a wedding gift for himself and, symbolically, for his father. That's a beautiful idea, said Jessica. You two can work on the restoration together. And I can help too, offered Stephen. And I can draw pretty designs to paint on it, suggested Emily. Robert was moved when Michael shared the plan. Son, are you sure? It'll take a lot of work and money. I'm sure that truck is where everything started for us. It's where I decided to look for you. I want it to be part of our family's story again. Then let's restore it together. The truck was towed to a shop in Austin, where Michael, Robert, and Stephen began working on it every weekend. Emily often visited, bringing snacks and suggesting colors and decorations. How are you going to paint it? She asked during one visit. Blue, like it was before, said Michael. What about blue with some little flowers on the doors? Suggested Emily. Flowers? Asked Robert. Yes, to represent our family. Each flower can be a person. I like that idea, said Michael. Jessica will love it too. The restoration took 3 months. Working together, father, son, and stepfather didn't just fix the truck. They strengthened their bond. Robert taught old-school mechanic skills, Stephen contributed engineering know-how, and Michael coordinated everything with youthful enthusiasm. Dad, can I ask you something? Michael said one afternoon in the shop. Of course. Do you still regret anything? Robert stopped polishing the fender and looked at his son. Just one thing. What? Not believing sooner that you'd love me despite my illness and limitations. Why do you think you didn't believe it? Because I didn't think I deserved to be loved like that. I always thought love had to be perfect to earn a family. And now I know love isn't about deserving. It's about choosing. And you chose me, limitations and all. We chose you because you chose us too, Dad. Even from afar, even punishing yourself, you never stopped loving us. You're very wise for a 20-year-old. I had good teachers. Mom taught me about forgiveness. Stephen taught me about dedication. Emily teaches me about acceptance every day. And you taught me about persistence. Me? You persisted in loving me even when you thought you shouldn't. You kept up with my life even from a distance. And when I showed up at your door, you kept trying to be a good dad even when you thought you'd lost the right. Robert hugged his son, hands greasy and eyes full of tears. Thank you, Michael, for giving me a second chance, for including me in your life, for teaching me it's never too late to start over. Thank you, Dad, for teaching me that sometimes the hardest love is self-love, and that family is about showing up, not being perfect. The wedding week arrived quickly. The truck was ready, painted blue with delicate little flowers on the doors, just as Emily had suggested. Each flower represented a family member, including a special one for Jessica. Robert had lost some weight from nerves but looked visibly happy and proud. He spent hours preparing his suit, the same one he'd bought to meet the family for the first time. How do I look? He asked Karen on the wedding morning. Handsome. Michael will be so proud walking by your side. I'm the one who's proud. 20 years ago, I thought I'd lost the chance to see my son get married forever. But you didn't. You're here, part of it all. Thanks to you. If you hadn't sent photos all these years, if you hadn't raised Michael with so much love, Robert, stop blaming yourself. The past is the past. Today is for celebrating. The ceremony was moving. Michael looked handsome in his navy blue suit, and Jessica glowed in her simple yet beautiful dress. Robert James walked his son down the aisle, visibly emotional, but keeping his composure. Thank you for being here, Dad, Michael whispered when they reached the altar. Thank you for letting me be here, Robert James replied. The reception at the ranch was exactly as they'd imagined. Simple, family-filled, full of love and laughter. The restored pickup truck was parked in a place of honor, decorated with fresh flowers for the occasion. During his speech, Michael thanked everyone who had made the day possible. I especially want to thank my father, Robert James, who taught me it's never too late to start over, and my family, who taught me love is about choice, not perfection. Robert James stood and asked to speak as well. Michael, when you found me on the road a year ago, I was lost. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. You brought me back to life, gave me a family, gave me a future. Thank you for not giving up on me. And Jessica, thank you for loving my son and accepting me as part of the family. You've all given me the greatest gift a person can receive, a second chance. There wasn't a dry eye at the party. Even Emily, who rarely got serious, was moved. The celebration lasted late into the night, with music, dancing, and countless stories shared. Robert James danced with Karen to an old song they used to listen to when they were young, swayed with Emily to a children's tune she chose, and finally waltzed simply with Jessica. Thank you for welcoming me into the family, Jessica said during their dance. Thank you for making my son happy, and for helping me feel like part of all this. You've always been part of it. It just took a while for everyone to find their way. At the end of the night, as guests left and the family tidied up, Michael found Robert James sitting alone in the restored truck. How are you feeling, Dad? Whole. For the first time in 20 years, I feel whole. It was a perfect day. It was. And you know what's most beautiful? This is just the beginning. We have many more days like this ahead. You're right. Birthdays, births, Christmases, simple everyday moments. Simple moments are the best, like fishing together, fixing things together, family dinners. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. Are you happy now? Robert James looked around the ranch where he'd lived alone for so many years, then at the house where the family still talked and laughed. Happier than I ever imagined I could be again. And you? Me too. I have the woman I love, the family I always dreamed of having whole, a bright future ahead. Then we did the right thing. All of us. We did. They sat in comfortable silence, father and son, in the truck that had once symbolized separation but now stood for reunion. Stars shone in the clear ranch sky, and in the distance, the voices of family still carried. Michael, can I tell you a secret? Of course. All those years alone, I always dreamed of this moment. You married happy with a complete family. I never thought I'd live to see it happen. But you did, and you'll live to see so much more. Grandkids, their graduations, more family weddings. Grandkids. Robert James's eyes lit up. Jessica and I want to have children soon. And Emily will grow up and get married someday too. Am I going to be a grandpa? You'll be the best grandpa in the world. Robert Johnson hugged his son once more, tears of joy streaming down his face. Thank you, son, for giving me not just a gift, but a whole future. Thank you, Dad, for teaching me that true love is worth any wait. The end of the story. And what did you think of this story of reunion and forgiveness? Did Emily and Robert Johnson's journey touch your heart? Leave a comment sharing if you've ever experienced something similar or know someone who has. Your opinion means so much to us. Don't forget to like if the story moved you, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartfelt stories like this one.